More power and more energy. With our new Fronius Reserva Pro, you have now the possibility to build middle up to big hybrid systems. With our new battery, you have the possibility to install from 12 kilowatt hours of usable capacity and up to 32 kilowatt hours of usable capacity. Furthermore, you have the possibility to interconnect up to 4 towers into one system to gain a maximum capacity of 128 kilowatt hours of usable capacity. In combination with our Fronius Verto Plus and Gen 24 Plus series, you have the possibility to build up your system. Please note, especially together with our Fronius Verto Plus, you have now the possibility to achieve up to 28.3 kilowatt of usable power. So that means that especially for bigger systems where you have high power needs and especially for backup power situations where you need high power, this combination is the perfect match. So in this video we are going to show you the installation and commissioning process of the battery, and we are going to start with the installation of the battery modules itself. When placing the ground floor of the battery, please make sure that the DC plug is on the left top side to make sure that the back of the battery is placed to the wall and the front is in front of you. Furthermore, you can use the screws down below here to make sure that the floor stand is leveled, and please use a spirit level to make sure that the ground floor is leveled. After you place the ground plate to the floor, you can now start with the first module. Please make sure to always have the DC plug on the left top side, so to make sure that it is lined correctly with the ground plate. As you can see, the module locks automatically to the ground plate, and every other module that you place on top of it also locks automatically in place. To uninstall the modules from each other, you need to remove the side cover of the battery system and remove the 2 plastic clips from the module itself. After that, it is unlocked and you can remove the module from each other. For the scope of delivery of the battery system, you will find all the installation material that you need. First of all, we start with our MC4 EvoStore plugs. Please note there are 2 different packages of MC4 EvoStore plugs inside the packaging. One time for the 6 square millimeter cable variant and one time for the 10 square millimeter cable variant. Please note that the 6 square millimeter cable variant is good for a current of maximum 47 amps and the 10 square millimeter variant is good for a current of up to 62 amps. So please note, especially with the variant of the inverter that you're installing, that you choose the right diameter for your cable. That means most of the times for the Gen 24 Plus variant, you can use the 6 square millimeter cables with the up to 47 amps. And for the Verto Plus, please note that you always take the 10 square millimeter variants with the correlating cable, since this is good for up to 62 amps, since the Verto Plus can do a higher current. Main difference for the MC4 EvoStore is that this is a proprietary socket for battery connection. So these MC4 EvoStores are tilted 90 degrees in angle, meaning that you can't mix up string plugs with the battery plugs. So this should prevent mixing up the sockets to prevent a security issue. Furthermore, we have our IP protection caps in scope of delivery, and they can be used with our tilted ceiling here to install them directly on a pre-manufactured .com cable. So that means that there is no need to cut open the wire, especially for the data communication between the battery systems, but you can use fixed and finished preconditioned CAT cables to make sure that you have an easier time installing and that you are much faster during the installation process. For mechanical reasons, we have our wall mount within scope of delivery, and as you can see with these mounting handles here, you can alternate them in the depth of the system. So depending on how far the battery system is installed away from the wall, you have a little bit of possibility here to change that. Furthermore, there are two screws in scope of delivery to screw down the wall mount to the battery system itself. This is then installed on the battery system battery management unit. To fix down the cover of the battery management unit, you have these plastic clips inside the scope of delivery, and that means that these two splints can be installed directly on the cover, and then these clips can be pushed down from above. Please note, whenever you have these ferrite rings within scope of delivery of your battery, you need to install them on the data communication cable 2 times that goes to the inverter of the system. Please note, whenever you don't have these ferrite rings in scope of delivery, that means that you have a newer system where the ferrite rings are already integrated in the battery management unit of the system, so no need to install them externally. We now start with the installation of the Reserva Pro, and therefore we have one communication area for the datacom communication and one cabling for the DC cables, for the power cables that go to the inverter. As you can see, we have DC1 plus and minus, as well as DC2 plus and minus. And then we have for the inverter one RJ45 clamp for the inverter communication cable, and then we have a parallel in and parallel out for the parallel connection of multiple Reserva Pro towers. For the communication to the inverter, you're using DC1 plus and DC1 minus to connect your PV inverter. And for the DC2 plus and minus, you can do your parallel connection of up to multiple Reserva Pro towers. For the inverter connection, you're just using a Cat6 or higher cable to make the communication to the inverter. For that, you can use a pre-configured RJ45 plug. So with our plugs that you can tilt over the cable, they are slotted, and with that you can install a pre-configured cable for that. So let's start with the first thing, with the DC connection to the inverter. For the DC connection, you please take our scope of delivery MC4 plugs EvoStore. So these are plugs from Stäubli that are 90-degree tilted to a normal MC4 plug. So that means that they can be only used for battery connection. Please also note, in scope of delivery there are 2 different plugs. There is one plug for a 6 square millimeter cable and one plug for a 10 square millimeter cable. Please note very carefully, depending on which inverter you are using, so either the Gen 24 Plus or the Verto Plus, on which cable you are using. Since the 6 square millimeter cables are good up to 47 amps and the 10 square millimeter cables are good for up to a maximum current of 62 amps. So normally this would mean that for the Gen 24 Plus devices, you can take the 6 square millimeter cables and the plugs, and for the Verto Plus, you need to take at least the 10 square millimeter cables and the plugs. For the data communication, please note, whenever there is a ferrite ring inside scope of delivery of your Reserva Pro, please use this ring and cover it with the LAN cable, so to make sure that there are no interferences and no bad data communication on it. If there is no such ring in your scope of delivery, that means that you have a newer device where the ring is already integrated in the battery management system. Please note that you once make a loop with the cable so that the ring can power up its full functionality. For the IP protection cap, you first plug in your protection cap on one hand side, and then you use your slotted shield that you can place over the cable. When we are finished with the inverter cabling, we can then use our protective earth and make the functional grounding of the system. You can do this with this little screw. To screw this down, please take a Torx 20 screwdriver. After that, if you're installing multiple batteries within a system, you now need to do the parallel connection of the towers, and therefore we are using our DC2 plus and minus connectors and our parallel in and out connectors. Please note, for the parallel connection, you will, for the data communication, always use for the first battery in the system, so that one that is connected with the inverter, you're using the parallel out contact to go with the first data communication cable to the second battery. Please note that within the first battery, the parallel in contact stays open. So there is no termination plug that comes inside here, you just leave it open as it is. To do the termination on this data communication, you need to open up the debug port that is on the right hand side beneath the cover. We will do this afterwards to activate or deactivate the termination resistance on each and every battery system. After the first one, when you go with the parallel out contact from the first battery to the second battery, in the second battery you're using the parallel in contact to connect the cable, and then from the second battery to the third, again you need to take the parallel out contact to go to the parallel in contact of the third battery, and so on and so forth. At the last battery system, you're only taking the parallel in contact to connect the cable, and the parallel out contact stays open, so again there is no termination plug that goes into the parallel out contact. For the data communication of the parallel connection, please again take our IP protection cap. You can very easily install them on the cable. After you are done with the installation, last thing that you can do, you can use our cable protection with these cable locks that we got here to secure the cable from mechanical damage. So this is possible for the data communication side, as well as a second cable lock for the DC cables that you can secure down below here. After that, you are finished with the data communication, and we can now proceed to the side part, to the debug port. For the last step, to conclude the parallel connection of multiple towers, you now need to set the terminal resistor switch inside the debugging port on the right hand side of the battery system. To gain access to this debugging port, you please remove the metal cover on the right hand side of the battery by just lifting it up. Down below you see your debugging port, and you are now using a Torx 20 screwdriver to remove the cover from the battery. Down below the cover you will see our terminal resistor switch, and this is now our terminal resistor to make sure that the termination of the battery systems can be set correctly. Please note, depending on how you install the parallel connection, you need to make sure that always the last part in the communication chain is set to terminal resistor switch on position. Please also note, ex factory, the terminal resistor switch is always set to the on position. Meaning that in our case, we now want to install, for example, 4 batteries in parallel. We need to set all the terminal resistor switch to off, so that means the first battery that is connected to the inverter, the second and the third battery need to set to off position, and only the last battery in the system, the fourth battery, that stays on the on position. So that means, since the parallel connector unit is always set to on position, you need to open up the first 3 batteries, so battery 1, 2 and 3, and set the terminal resistor switch to off position. So with that setting now, the parallel connection can be activated and it will be recognized. After that, you close down the cover again and screw it down with your Torx 20 screwdrivers. To mount the battery system to the wall, you will find in scope of delivery our wall mounting bracket. To install the wall mounting bracket, you use the bottom side of it to screw down the 2 screws directly to the battery management system. These 2 screws are Torx 20 screws and can be directly installed to the BMS. As you can see with our tilts here, you can alternate the height that the battery system is away from the wall, so depending on the actual diameters you can just install these, and whenever you have found the perfect situation you can then close down the screws to fix the wall mount in place. On the other hand side, you are taking 2 screws to mount the battery system to the wall. Last but not least, you now put the cover on top of the battery system, close the cover, and to make sure that the cover is tilted to the battery system, you can just use these plastic clips, put them on top of each other and put them down. After we have finished the installation process of the Reserva Pro, we now want to proceed with the installation process of the hybrid inverter. For that, please take the scope of delivery MC4 Evo Store sockets that you will find in scope of delivery of the Verto Plus and connect them to the battery plus and minus connection of the bottom side of the inverter. Furthermore, the data communication cable can be also installed on the bottom side of the Verto Plus and can be connected directly to the pilot car inside the connection area of the inverter. When you have finished installing the battery modules and the battery management unit, next up you can now switch on the battery to go on with the initial commissioning process. Therefore, you open up the cover on the left-hand side of the battery to gain access to the high voltage switch. To activate the battery, you simply press on the switch. After that, you can see the LED signs on the right-hand side. You have one status LED and one connection LED to the inverter. To make sure that the switch is IP protected, you need to close the cover again and screw it down with the 2 screws on the bottom side. The order in which you switch on the battery or the inverter doesn't matter, so you can either switch on the inverter first or the battery first. This doesn't make difference. After you have switched on the Fronius Reserva Pro, you can now also switch on the hybrid inverter and start with commissioning and adding the new component in the hybrid system. Therefore, you activate the hybrid inverter and switch on the Wi-Fi access point to connect to the web interface of the inverter. After you have logged in to the Fronius web interface, you can now make the commissioning process directly on the inverter. How to log into the web interface you can watch in an extra how-to video. First step is to log into your account. Please note that you will hit the login button on the right top page of the site and then choose the technician user. Please note that only authenticated personnel can do this and you need to have the technician password to log in. This password was given away by the installer for the first initial commissioning of the inverter. After that, you gain access to the so-called device configuration in the settings. This button you can hit and then you hit the point components. For the hybrid system, you need to have at minimum a PV generator. There you are setting in the settings for the PV modules that you installed on the roof. And you need to have a primary meter so that the hybrid system can control itself. In the primary meter, you can either set a Modbus RTU, TCP or MQTT meter, so depending on which smart meter you are adding. After that, you click on Add Component and then you choose the battery. And here, under the type, you can choose our Fronius battery type. And after that, we recommend you to set the SOC limit mode Stay on Automatic. There, the battery system will regulate itself from 0% state of C to 100% SOC. And this is also our recommendation. So for the end customer, this is the most logical way that he can use his battery system from 0 to 100. No worries, of course, at 0% SOC, the battery is not really at 0%. We have a buffer beneath that to save the battery life. Furthermore, you can also add the battery charging from other sources. So for example, if you have an alternating AC source, like a second inverter or wind turbine or whatever, you can also set here from other generators in the home network and then just add the AC source. So let's assume we have an 8 kilowatt inverter in this system that we also want to use for battery charging. You can just add here 8 kilowatt of power. Second possibility is from other generators in the home network and from public grid, and you choose this variant when using our ECA, our energy cost assistant. When you have done all the settings, you can hit the Add button and please, very important, the Save button to make sure that the new settings are applied and the hybrid system is now commissioned. Please also note that you can now log into your solar web system and online make a firmware update for the battery system. So whenever you want to do a firmware update of the battery system, you can do this directly over the solar web system from afar. There is no need to go to the customer site in person, but you can do this from afar. Same thing goes for the inverter firmware. Please check before the commissioning process that your inverter has the newest firmware installed, especially when you are updating an older inverter like 2 or 3 years ago. Please make sure that the newest firmware is installed so that you can add the Fronius battery to the system. And with that, installation and commissioning of the Fronius Reserva Pro is finished. We hope that you have lots of fun with your new battery system, and we wish you all the best with your next installation. See you and goodbye here at Fronius.